This Week with Bob Mueller on News 2.
This week,
So you've got to stop the bleeding.
Look, we fixed this issue.
the first and only vice presidential debate between Tim Walz and J.D. Vance. More in our This Week cover story.
There is a tremendous amount of work to do.
The governor deploys the National Guard to help the response effort to historic flooding in East Tennessee from Hurricane Helene.
The United States, the nation, has your back.
The president inspects hurricane damage in the Carolinas as millions in the South work to recover from the storm. Iran fires missiles on Israel, increasing the fear of a wider war in the Middle East. Hello again, and welcome to another edition of This Week. Abortion, the border crisis, election interference, and more, all debated in the first and only meeting between vice presidential candidates Tim Walz and J.D. Vance. More in our This Week cover story. The governor and the president inspect hurricane damage in Tennessee and the Carolinas. But we begin with Iran firing missiles into Israel that could widen the Middle East conflict.
Tonight, a rattled Israel weighing its response to Iran's unprecedented missile attack, but promising a fast and painful retaliation. A new video from the cockpit of a plane showing a wave of those Iranian missiles headed for Israel, arcing up into the sky over Iran.
I've never seen anything like this. I need to get some cover.
Iran pouring about 200 ballistic missiles into Israel, they say in response to recent Israeli assassinations of the leaders of Hezbollah and Hamas. Most of the missiles were intercepted. The U.S. releasing these videos showing a Navy destroyer launching interceptors, taking out multiple missiles. But some missiles pierced Israel's air defenses. Video shot by local residents showing this barrage blasting a military base in southern Israel, missiles hitting 3 Israeli bases and several cities. We saw some of the damage firsthand today.
I want to give you a sense of the power of these missiles. The one that obliterated the facade of this building actually landed about 100 feet into the ocean, but the blast wave was so powerful it did this and sprayed seawater 3 stories high.
Israel bombing Beirut, partly an effort to show it was unaffected by that missile strike. Thousands of Americans desperate to get out of the city. The State Department revealing 7,000 people contacted the U.S. Embassy in Beirut, many looking to leave. The first government charter flight departing today, carrying more than 100 Americans and their families.
We do expect to organize additional flights out of Beirut.
Israeli ground forces pressing deeper into Lebanon, suffering their first deadly resistance. And tonight, dramatic new video circulating online appearing to show IDF helicopters airlifting soldiers out of southern Lebanon. Israel saying at least 8 soldiers were killed, 20 more wounded. The Iran-backed militia Hezbollah saying it was a massive IED blast.
That missile strike rattling so many Israelis, more of those missiles crashing in than many people expected. And while President Biden called for a proportional response, today Israeli leaders signaling a disproportionate response, the kind that would deter Iran from doing this again. The timing is unclear, but could be in the coming days. Matt Gutman, ABC News, Tel Aviv.
A victory for special counsel Jack Smith as a federal judge made public new evidence of Donald Trump's involvement in the January 6th insurrection and attempt to overturn Joe Biden's victory in the 2020 election.
Tonight, just 34 days before the election, special counsel Jack Smith presenting new evidence of Donald Trump's alleged criminal conspiracy to overturn the 2020 vote and cling to power. In the sweeping 165-page filing, Smith arguing Trump's deeds were not the official acts of a president, protected by the recent Supreme Court ruling on immunity, but the desperate efforts of a losing candidate. The brief presents the fullest picture yet of Smith's case that Trump knew he lost, but lied to the American people anyway. Prosecutors claim they spoke to one White House staffer who said he overheard Trump telling family members, "It doesn't matter if you won or lost the election. You still have to fight like hell." And then on January 6th, Trump told his supporters to do just that.
You fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
Smith writing that Trump is directly responsible for the tinderbox that he purposely ignited on January 6th. Smith goes on to say the defendant also knew that he had only one last hope to prevent Biden's certification as president, the large and angry crowd standing in front of him. The special counsel pointing to a tweet Trump sent from his private dining room off the Oval Office as the riot was unfolding at the Capitol. Quote, Trump was alone in his dining room when he issued a tweet attacking Pence and fueling the ongoing riot. Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution. Smith noting that since Trump was alone when he sent the tweet and sent it from his personal Twitter account, it would not be considered an official presidential act. Shortly after Trump posted the tweet, Vice President Pence was whisked to a secure location by the Secret Service. According to the special counsel's filing, Trump was informed by a White House staffer who hoped the defendant would take action to ensure Pence's safety. Instead, Trump allegedly looked at him and said, "Only so what?" And tonight, Donald Trump lashing out, calling Jack Smith's filing a falsehood-ridden hit job. He says releasing the brief just over a month before the election amounts to election interference. Pierre Thomas, ABC News, Washington.
Now to our This Week cover story, the vice presidential debate between Republican J.D. Vance and Democrat Tim Walz. It was policy-driven, mostly cordial. Both candidates had good and bad moments. Here's ABC's Andrew Dimbert.
The night kicked off with a handshake, but things grew contentious when the discussion turned to how immigrants have been illegally entering the country.
That is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by our own leadership.
Thank you, Senator, for describing the legal process. We have so much to get to, Senator.
Those laws have been on the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The CBP app has not been on the books since 1990. It's something that Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut.
Vance was pressed on Trump's proposal to carry out mass deportations.
I had a mother who struggled with opioid addiction and has gotten clean. I don't want people who are struggling with addiction to be deprived of their second chance because Kamala Harris let in fentanyl into our communities at record levels. So you've got to stop the bleeding.
Look, we fix this issue with a bill that is necessary, but the issue on this is what happens when you don't want to solve it. You demonize it.
On abortion, Vance describing a woman close to him who had the procedure.
She told me something a couple years ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue.
Meanwhile, Walz addressed a personal controversy about his travels to China, with news reports finding his previous claim that he was in Hong Kong during the 1989 Tiananmen Square protests was not true.
I got there that summer and misspoke on this. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect, and I'm a knucklehead at times.
At one point, the candidates were asked whether Trump's refusal to cede power after losing the 2020 election was a threat to democracy.
I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship.
Andrew Dimbert, ABC News, New York.
Stay with us. This Week continues in a moment.